Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. As you know, the line in the sand is our Second Amendment, and to that end, I wanted to invite on the founder of Oath Keepers, Stewart Rhodes, to discuss that very important fact. But first, I just want to share some good news. We have rebuilt SGT Report once again, this time transferring the site to a new hosting company to provide for better, faster uploads. We hope you enjoy that. Check us out at sgtreport.com. And please do support our premier sponsor, SD Bullion. Click the banner at the top of SGT Report for this month's special offer, only 39 cents over spot for the beautiful 1-ounce SD Bullion Silver Freedom rounds. That's a 34% off premium discount. Use the code SGT3. We love those guys at SD Bullion, and we really appreciate their support. We certainly appreciate your support too. So with that, we'll turn it over to U.S. Army Airborne veteran and the founder of Oath Keepers. Stewart, thanks so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Stewart, I want to let you know that the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center, calls Oath Keepers fiercely anti-government, which makes me chuckle because it's the same SPLC who helped terminate dozens and dozens of conservative and pro-Second Amendment channels. Ironic, huh?
Well, I mean, what's really bizarre about that is that we're made up of government employees. We have current serving military and police, firefighters, EMTs. They're all government employees or retired government employees. So it's just a leftist smear to try to demonize us. So in fact, we're probably going to wind up suing them over that because it's pretty obvious they know we're not anti-government. We're not anarchists. We don't advocate the overthrow of the U.S. government. So in fact, we're the exact opposite of their friends. They hang out with Bill Ayers, who was an actual communist revolutionary who wanted to overthrow the United States government. So if anyone's anti-government, it's the people that SPLC hangs out with.
Well, that's 100% true, and I actually included a soundbite from an FBI informant and infiltrator of the Weather Underground who told us what the plan of the Weather Underground was, and that's the organization Bill Ayers was involved in when he helped bomb the Pentagon.
He founded it. He was the founder. He was one of the founders.
Yeah, and one of their plans was once they took over the U.S. government, those of us who couldn't be, quote-unquote, re-educated to the new communist way of thinking would have to be exterminated.
I ask, well, what is going to happen to those people that we can't re-educate, that are die-hard capitalists? And the reply was that they'd have to be eliminated. And when I pursued this further, they estimated that they would have to eliminate 25 million people in these re-education centers. And when I say eliminate, I mean kill.
Their words, up to 25 million Americans. Stewart, these people are diabolical, and yet they flip the script on us when all you want to do, all I want to do, all any of us want, are leaders who will respect and defend, honor and defend the Constitution. It's that simple.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the problem we're in, is that I don't think the founders expected this kind of an internal, you can call it an internal soft coup, of over many generations and over decades of radical, basically radical Marxists infiltrating, our political system. They did what they call the Long March. They took over academia, they infused themselves in the judiciary, and of course in the government itself.
I want to ask you a variety of questions. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the Parkland shooting. I definitely want to talk about CPAC. President Trump appeared there and said, we will not let them do it.
They'll take away your Second Amendment, which we will never allow to happen. They'll take away your Second Amendment.
And I want to talk about the powerful speech from NRA spokesperson Dana Lash. But let me ask you this first. Do you find that this collective move against our guns by the enemies of freedom and the Constitution, is it just one group or is it groupthink? Because it seems to me that when I put up a video, I get a lot of comments below my videos saying, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. And of course the SPLC and the ADL is there to defend the rights of the Jews, etc. But it seems to me a lot of the brainwashed fools that were screaming at Dana Lash at the Florida CNN town hall, they come from all walks of life. They all seem to share the same communist thinking, though. So who are these people?
I think it's a mistake to try to say it's any one particular group. It's an ideology. It's an ideology of radical totalitarianism. And of course, totalitarianism, whether it's fascist or communist, they don't like independent people, and they don't like a population that can resist them. So just as you pointed out about Bill Ayers' ultimate plan, They know that in order to finally crush the, I guess you call it traditional Americans in this country, people who still believe in individual liberty and believe in property rights and all the things that make up Western civilization, in order to crush us, they have to disarm us first. They know that. So they're having a problem, actually. This goes to show their fear, frankly. If they were not, people say oftentimes, oh, what are you going to do against, modern military? How are you going to ever fight back against that? Well, if that were the case, if we were so outmatched by the modern military, presuming the military would side with them, then why are they so intent on taking our firearms? And so the answer really is they're not that comfortable or that sure of themselves being able to defeat us. And then, of course, you got to throw in the monkey wrench of the military being predominantly from the country, from the red states and from the rural areas of this country. Those are the trigger pullers, and they have not yet indoctrinated them. So they have a real serious problem on their hands. But they're going to push, and they're going to get what they can whenever they can. And this is why every time there's a school shooting, they're going to capitalize on it. David Kodria and I both call them blood dancers. They dance in the blood of these dead children. And of course, you propose anything that's sensible that actually would stop the shooting, like arming the teachers, as is done in Israel. That they scream and yell and call you an extremist. Right now, we have oath keepers across the country who have stepped up and they're guarding schools. They're outside the schools, and they're doing their best to work with the school systems, the local school systems, to get retired police officers, for example, into the schools, because that's what it takes. The only way to stop the shooting in time to save the kids from being killed is to have somebody in the school who's armed and trained who can put a stop to it. Otherwise, the first thing they do is dial 911, and they're trying to call somebody else who's armed and trained to come to the school. That's the local cops. But the average response time is 13 minutes. And the average shooting time is about 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. So by the time the cops get there, the damage is done. Like in this case, in Parkland down there, he did what he wanted to do, stopped of his own volition, and then blended in with the crowd and left. So that's how slow the police response was. He had plenty of time to kill 17 people and then exfiltrate, disguised as a student.
Yeah, and I want to talk about Parkland briefly, but you mentioned the word blood dancers, which I think is spot on, because you'll notice that these people aligned against our freedoms, our constitutionally guaranteed freedoms as sovereign human beings who get our rights granted to us by God, by the Creator, not by any government or any government official or any government body that can then take those rights away. Those rights are ours forever. They're inalienable. And I don't understand what part of shall not be infringed these people don't get, Stewart. But you said blood dancers. They'll dance in the blood of these kids to try to move their agenda forward. Meanwhile, they have no problem with millions and millions of babies being aborted every year. Don't you find that kind of funny?
Well, we can't expect consistency in politics. That's the problem, And of course, the agenda is not merely trying to save lives. Like I said, if you're trying to save lives, there's some pretty obvious steps that you take that Israel took a long time ago. I believe it's been like 20 years since they've had a school shooting in Israel. Actually had two attempted ones. They were both shot and killed by the teachers. But that's how you solve it. So we should just look at what works, what's worked for decades in another country, and apply it here. And in fact, there's a sheriff, I think his name is Judd, in Polk County, Florida, who's been doing it for 2 years. He's had armed teachers in the schools in his county for 2 years with no problems whatsoever. So it's an effective policy that does work, and it's been demonstrated to work. It's not some kind of hypothetical. It's been demonstrated to work in Israel, and it's also been demonstrated to work in Polk County, Florida, which is, just like one county over or 2 counties over from the county where the shooting happened.
Yeah, you mentioned Israel, and what popped into my head was Dianne Feinstein foaming at the mouth at that recent Oval Office or White House meeting with the president. Of course, it was Dianne Feinstein and Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, who seemed to be in sync to some degree with the president. Or, see, I posted a video, Stewart, called The Ultimate Betrayal, and I just wanted to remind our president that the Second Amendment is the line in the sand. I think he knows that. I think he respects the Second Amendment. And I had a lot of comments under that video saying...
I'm not sure that's true.
Okay, well, I want to talk about that because I had a lot of comments under that video saying the president's playing 4D chess with these people. He would never infringe on our Second Amendment rights. Meanwhile, in that video clip that I can play right now...
Diane, if you could add what you have also, and I think you can, into the bill.
Yeah. Show her you're ready.
Can you do that?
He seems to be playing quite friendly with Feinstein and Klobuchar. and they want to take our guns. So what is the truth here? Does the president understand that this is the line in the sand? Do you worry at all that he doesn't?
I don't think he understands the Constitution, frankly, to be blunt. He's a businessman. I don't think he ever sat down and actually studied the document or its history. I mean, I'm not trying to be mean about it, but just a reality. So that's the reality. He's a businessman, and he's got backbone at times, but apparently when it comes to this, he's starting to fold. What you don't want to do is give an inch, because they'll take a mile. They'll smell blood and they'll keep pushing. So it's exactly the wrong strategy. He should have just said, nope, not doing it, and I'm going to go. What he should have done is deploy the National Guard into the schools. What he should have done. And until they fix the problem, until they amend LEOSA, for example, to allow retired cops to go into schools to stop killings, the president should just nationalize the National Guard and deploy them out to go guard the schools. That's what he should do.
Yeah.
But instead of doing that, that's the hardball thing to do. But instead of doing that, he's basically, giving them all the branches, and trying to come to a compromise. In business, you can compromise. When it comes to our rights, you can't compromise. It's a violation of his oath. It's outside of the scope of his powers for any of them to compromise on our rights.
Well, I want to play a clip here from Dana Loesch's speech at CPAC here in February of 2018, just less than a month ago. And I want to talk about the fact that our enemies are playing hardball with us, because you'll notice these shootings keep taking place at soft targets. And they say the solution is to take all of our guns, take the guns of the law-abiding citizens who can rightfully own them and whose ability to own them is constitutionally protected, line in the sand. They don't care, and they don't want to be intellectually honest about the fact that inner city Chicago is a hellhole, strictest gun laws in the country. Same with Washington, D.C. They don't care, and they don't seem to want to have the conversation or admit that the bad guys, those who don't respect or obey the law, will continue to have guns and then victimize those of us who had our guns taken away. Why don't they want to have that conversation? It's so elementary.
Well, look at France. France is, you want to talk about an entire country that's made it extremely difficult to own firearms, and yet the Charlie Hebdo terrorist attack was with AK-47 smuggled in from outside the country, and then the later attacks in Paris at the theater and the market were also with AK-47 smuggled in from outside. So, you can't put a magic force field around the entire nation and get rid of all firearms. It's not going to happen, and they know that. That's not their goal. Their goal is to decrease the military power of their opponents. That's their goal.
Right. No, I 100% agree. I think the whole thing is a ruse. It's an illusion of a problem. It's a problem they create, problem, reaction, solution. They staged the shootings in many cases. The FBI does nothing to stop the shootings in many cases. And then they say the solution is to take the guns from those of us who had nothing to do with the shootings. All right, here comes Dana. Listen to this. I think she's spot on.
Washington Navy Yard, Garland, Texas, Fort Hood, Charleston, Boston, San Bernardino, Orlando, Parkland. Do you know what all of these mass tragedy incidents involved? FBI dropped the ball.
The FBI dropped the ball. The FBI drops the ball a lot, don't they, Stewart?
Well, they do, but still, even with the best intelligence, like look at Mossad, right? Look at Israel again. Even with great counterintelligence and anti-terrorism units, they still have armed teachers, because that's what it takes. You can't go and try to find in advance, a pre-crime, everybody who's going to snap and go try to shoot up a school. What they can do is arm the teachers, and the second thing they should be doing is that man's name should never be anywhere. Don't give him any press, because a lot of these guys do it because they want to go out in style and they want to be in the press. So if you deny them any press, they don't have that.
Yeah, it's a good point, but let's just flush out that Parkland shooting a little bit. I'll mention his name. His last name here is Cruz, and I'm not sure if he acted alone in the case of Parkland. So it would be really great to have the video surveillance at the school from within the school released, because you noted that he went in within 2 minutes of shooting the place up, and then he escaped into the crowd. That's the official timeline. I've looked at the official timeline according to Mockingbird mainstream news source Time.com, remember Time magazine, and they say after he exited the Uber, he was inside the school shooting within 2 minutes, Stewart. When he was done shooting, within 6 minutes, they say, he blended into the crowd and escaped. How in the world would a young man be able to... Okay, here's my question. If that's true, Where did all the black gear go? Where did the helmet go? Where did the gun go? Where did everything go that this teacher, Stacy, describes that she saw? She thought it was a cop in there shooting because this person was so heavily armored.
And then I suddenly saw the shooter about 20 feet from me, standing at the end of the hallway, actively shooting down the hallway, just a barrage of bullets. And I'm staring at him thinking, why is the police here? This is strange, because he's in full metal garb, helmet, face mask, bulletproof armor.
And the question is, where's the video surveillance? Why won't Sheriff Israel release it? Why does there appear to be a cover-up as to the facts of what happened here? And look, Stewart, I know you can't see this video. We're having a conversation here via phone. But there's video showing 4 police officers, 4 men, all dressed in the same type of gear that Stacy says she saw the shooter wearing. And they're carrying out a very heavy black bag that they put in the back of a white pickup truck. My question is, why is the video not being released, the surveillance video that will prove the official story is true? So many times in these shootings, Stewart, the official story doesn't always add up.
Well, it's probably privacy concerns for the families, having video of their children being shot. So I think that's a legitimate concern by the families. But I think what needs to happen is there should be a citizens panel that is allowed to look at it so they can verify what happened. That's what I would encourage people to push for. Is it under the banner of either the governor of Florida or by the President of the United States? Have some kind of panel that puts put together trustworthy people who we can rely on.
Right. All right. Well, I want to play another clip from Dana here from CPAC.
I mean, as far as the teacher, what she saw, I mean, maybe she saw a SWAT guy and thought it was a shooter. Who knows? I don't know. So I can't speculate on that. I'm sorry. I just can't. I understand what you're saying, and I understand the concern. I think the way to handle that, like I said, is with an independent review.
No, understood. And she did actually specifically say, and I'll play the clip here, she said she peeked out the door and saw the shooter dressed in that gear I described and saw him shooting down the hallway.
And then I suddenly saw the shooter about 20 feet from me, standing at the end of the hallway, actively shooting down the hallway, just a barrage of bullets. And I'm staring at him thinking, why is the police here? This is strange, because he's in full metal garb, helmet, face mask, bulletproof armor.
So specifically said that person she saw was shooting. I just think it's interesting that this young man could just disappear into the crowd. And then my question is, all right, fine. Where's the gear? Where's the gun? Where's the video? Why did he go hide in a... Yeah. Well,
could have jumped in the bathroom. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. So let me play.
My focus is on how do we prevent the next one, and really the way to do that is to arm the friggin' teachers and let retired cops and let retired soldiers. I'll pull a stint of duty. I'll go volunteer to be in a school. That's the way to handle it. We got retired police officers that'd be happy to do that.
Right. All right, well, let me play this clip from Dana, which I think really paints the picture that our enemies are very anti-American in nature. They're unbelievable, and they really hate the Constitution. Listen to this.
The government has proven that they cannot keep you safe. And yet, some people want all of us to disarm. You heard that town hall last night. They cheered the confiscation of firearms, and it was over 5,000 people. I had to have a security detail to get out. I wouldn't have been able to exit that if I did not have a private security detail. There were people rushing the stage and screaming, "Burn her." And I came there to talk solutions, and I still am going to continue that conversation on solutions.
Now, I want to play that clip, Stewart, because I think it's very telling that these people, our enemies, don't even want to have a conversation. They called that a CNN town hall. It was really, had it been up to these people, it would have been a CNN town hanging, because these people were calling Dana a murderer. They were trying to hold her responsible and the NRA responsible for this Parkland shooting, which is complete nonsense. We will not be gaslighted, she says later in the speech, into believing that Parkland was our fault. This is not our fault, but it's up to us to make sure that we retain our rights to keep and bear arms, correct?
Right. I mean, their entire thrust of it is that we shouldn't have guns at all in this country, that no private citizen should have a firearm, because the only way that would make any friggin' sense, So you're having the right to bear arms is the reason why the kids are dead. Of course, you can't go protect them in the school, though. So it's a perverse argument. Like I said, look at France. Even with a ridiculously draconian gun laws, the terrorists could still get them in. And in this country, look at our porous border with Mexico. You can bring in firearms like crazy, and they would come in as contraband. You ban guns, they'll just bring them in as contraband along with the drugs, and there'll be a market for them, and they'll be on the black market, and they'll be all over the street gangs, like you said.
Well, I'll tell you what. The bottom line here is that I want people to understand that there are men standing in the gap to protect our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. One of those men is Stewart Rhodes. He's the founder of Oath Keepers. So, Stewart, I want to play one last soundbite for you from Dana. We can talk about that. And then I want you to tell people how they can support Oath Keepers and potentially become an Oath Keeper themselves. So, before we go there, here's the final clip from Dana. And I think it's very important because, again, our enemies say we need new legislation. We need stricter laws. We need all sorts of different things to protect the children. When, in fact, if the government and if the states would obey and follow the laws and the systems in place, then there would be more protections against bad guys getting guns. Listen to this.
I want you to all ask yourselves, where are the stories about how only 38 states submit less than 80% of criminal convictions to the background check system? It's only as good as what's submitted to it. How many of you knew that? No. Why isn't Dianne Feinstein calling for that? I have to question whether or not they want this system to fail.
I think that's a great point. It seems that our enemies want this system to fail. They don't want the background checks systems that are in place to even be fully utilized, because then they can say, oh, the background check system doesn't work. It's so transparent. It's so obvious what they're up to, Stewart, and these people are truly traitors.
Well, actually, this kind of brings up the point of the problem with the NRA. The NRA talks about we got to enforce the gun laws that are already in the books. Well, those gun laws are also unconstitutional. So every time they pass a new gun law that's unconstitutional, the NRA screams and yells about enforcing it all the more. The background checks are never going to stop attacks like this, because if a guy can't get one in a gun shop, he's going to go buy it from a drug dealer. He's going to go find a way. If he wants one, he's going to go find it. Some jihadi like the guy and his wife in San Bernardino, you think they can't find weapons on the black market? Of course they can. So, I don't know. I mean, it's great to see the NRA make a lot of noise about standing up for our rights, but I don't trust them, frankly. I just don't trust them. Because when they pass it, they're going to demand that they enforce it all the way, to the hilt, against all of us. That's their only solution. Enforce the laws that are already on the books. Don't give more. Oh, then they pass a new one. Well, enforce that one too. No. They're all unconstitutional. What the NRA should do is talk about restoring the militia and talk about our responsibility, especially those of us who are trained, to be in the schools right now. That's what the NRA should be focused on, is training the teachers and putting the veterans and the military and police veterans in the schools now.
Well, you know what popped into my head, and I wrote it down here on my note sheet when we were talking earlier, and then I forgot to bring it back up. I want to commend everyone, frankly, who stood in the gap at Bundy Ranch. You had mentioned the fact that our enemies will say, well, what does it matter? What do y'all need guns for? Because the military can't be outpowered anyway. There'd be no way to stand up against a tyrannical government. But look what happened at Bundy Ranch. People that respected the Constitution stood in the gap. And I think it needs to be said that there is power. We all have power, and collectively, we have a lot of power. And we get our power through the Constitution. If we let them erode that or take away any of our constitutional rights, we will be serfs. We will live as serfs, which is exactly what they want. And according to Larry Grothwall, that infiltrator of the Weather Underground, they'd like to terminate us if they could. So it just needs to be said. You guys stood in the gap at Bundy.
And in Ferguson, it's another place where we stood up armed on rooftops to protect the shops and apartments against looters and arsonists. And we've done it all across the country against Antifa. We've had our retired police officers. Even in downtown Berkeley, we have retired cops who can carry anywhere in the country because of LEOSA, and they were armed. And so it matters. It makes a big difference. If you're not armed, then you're subject to violence by mobs, and you're also subject to violence by criminal gangs and terrorists, and then, of course, the worst gang, the radical leftists inside our own government, the ones from within the gates, the internal enemies.
All right. Well, I want to give you the final word about the Oath Keepers, about what those who are listening to this program can do, and hopefully people will share this far and wide, because to me, and I've said it at the beginning of the show, I'll continue to say it, the Second Amendment is the line in the sand. See, when the sitting governor in California just signed SB 277, the bill to make vaccinations mandatory, even if your kids are privately schooled or homeschooled. I thought that would be the line in the sand for Californians, Stewart. Evidently, that's not it. Evidently, forced needle injections by the state for your children is not the line in the sand for folks in California. But I do believe that nationally, the line in the sand is the Second Amendment. So I'm very passionate about this topic, and I'm very grateful to you for coming on, spending some time with us today. So final word on Oath Keepers and how people can get involved and how we can support you.
Well, we have our guys out right now. We're calling it Operation We Got Your Six. Most of them retired police officers and military veterans who are reaching out to their local schools, seeing if they can get the retired cops and military vets into the school campus with permission. But if not, then they're posting out, 1,000 feet away, whatever the legal limit is in their area, and standing guard. We've been doing it now for the last few weeks. So please support us. We can use the donations and also come join. If you're prior service, military, police, firefighters, EMTs, other first responder personnel, you can join as a full member. But if you're not, you can still join as an associate member, and then we'll train you. That's what our obligation is to you. So we encourage people to join. We could use new members to help us in every state. Other thing we're working on now is another pledge. People can sign. You can call it a Milan Labé pledge, to make it very clear to the president and to our enemies that this is it. We're not going to back up. So consider us all 3%ers. So the pledge be posted here this week, and I encourage folks to go look for it and then sign up on it. And that way your voice is heard.
Excellent. And shout out the website, will you please?
Yes, oathkeepers.org.
Okay. And Stewart, I want to thank you very much. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Very simple, black and white. It's called an oath. We just want the people in government and the military to respect it, to uphold it. Very simple. Oath Keepers, great name. The SPLC can go take a flying leap. We know what they're up to. Stewart, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, and God bless. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. For Real News 24/7, visit us at sgtreport.com, thephaser.com, and thelibertymill.com. We really appreciate you guys. God bless. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
And we will not be gaslighted into thinking that we are responsible for a tragedy that we had nothing to do with. It is not our job to follow up on red flags. It is not our job to make sure that states are reporting to the background check system.